mic.
Thank you again for your patience. So if there's anyone in the virtual audience that
There's no volume when Gus is speaking. Are you able to hear me? There's no volume coming from you guys.
How about now, Angela? Angela, can you hear us?
I can hear you now, Gus.
Okay. Irene, are you ready? Okay, well, the first item is public comment. Anyone wishing to address the city council on matters that are not on the agenda in the virtual world, please just raise your hand. And if you're here in person, please raise your hand as well. So any public comment?
I don't see any hands raised at this time, Chair.
Okay, I don't see any hands here at the fire hall either. First item is communications, and I had asked staff if there was any comments to be made on the two pieces of correspondence that we received.
Chair Walter, the committee member, and council member Paula, there's two communications that were included in your packet. The first of which was from Mr. Ralph Rowe. He's providing a communication in regards to the condition of local streets in Cloverdale. In his email, he is asking for the plan to address the degradation of certain streets within Cloverdale. He's included with this correspondence from the next door application, providing comments from various residents in regard to what could be characterized as maybe the disrepair of certain streets within the city. And ultimately, he concludes his communication with a question about what the city's plan to address the condition of the street.
Okay, well, that's not an agendized item, so we won't be discussing it. And would that fall under SB1? I'm pulling a blank here on SB1.
SB1 is one of the funding sources available to the city for performing street maintenance and street reconstruction.
All right.
Through the chair, I just have a couple of comments. I would like to have this placed on the agenda, and I would like to know what our SB1 and Measure M funds are currently planned in the budget. Unfortunately, I didn't see that part when I was looking through the budget, because we do have quite a few streets that are in disrepair, and I'd like to see what the real plan is. I know we can only do so many each year, but it'd be helpful, especially for the community, to kind of have kind of a plan. What's our first year, second year, and what kind of money are we raising through the SB1 funds as well as the Measure M funds, and what's the plan on that? I just quickly looked at the budget, and it looks like we're spending about $400,000 this year, and I'm not clear where that money's going to go. So it'd be helpful just to maybe put a little presentation together for our next meeting, and we can kind of all get a better understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And Eric, could you give us, when we get to SB1 on the standing items, can you give us an update on that 400,000? I think it's all earmarked for 4th Street. But it would be nice if we could officially hear it. Staff, anything else on correspondence?
Chair Walter, just moving down the agenda, the next correspondence or communication is from Saman Noramato. This is in regards to Rule 20A. Mr. Tomato is providing notice to the city by way of an email addressed to myself in regards to work credits under the Rule 20A program. He's currently identifying that the city of Cloverdale is considered inactive. We don't have an active Rule 20A program. Just for reference, Rule 20A is the program that helps to finance undergrounding of electric utility systems within the city. And also, as part of the notice, is indicating that the funds that are set aside under the designation of City of Cloverdale, which as of June 15, 2021, was $894,000, $721,000. The PG&E through the CPC has been reallocating those funding amounts, some of those credits, to other communities who have active Rule 20A projects. And this letter seeks city know that if we do not activate our Rural 28 program, that those credits can be reallocated to other communities. There has been a precedence for this. Certain fiscal year funding for the Rural 28 program has been allocated. I think most recently it was in the neighborhood of about $8,000 for annual allocation was allocated. I think it might have been to maybe Live Oak or another community that was undertaking a large project, and so they're providing notice that if we don't have an active project, our funds could be reallocated to another community.
And that's in 2022?
Correct. That would be could be in fiscal year 2021-22.
Okay, so I know we're not supposed to be discussing this because it's truly not agendized, but I'm just curious how the undergrounding in the south portion of Cloverdale is affected by this Rule 28. Because we do have undergrounding that we want to do there. And I know some of those businesses and property owners are going to contribute to that pool of money with the special assessment district. With that being said, is this $894,000 earmarked for that project?
It is not. They're currently allocated to any project. It requires an ordinance to be adopted by the city that sets forth the specific geographic area where it's like to carry out the specific undergrounding. You may recall, Chair, that staff did bring forward a resolution back in March of 2020 to the council to consider establishing an underground utility district. At that time, the council did not give direction to proceed with that process. There was additional evaluation and work that council wanted to undertake before deciding whether to establish an underground utility district. There is the ability of council to decide to consider, southwest planning area of the city as a potential underground utility district where utilizing funding. It's kind of a separate planning program that we were working on establishing in that area, namely a community facility district where the cost associated with undergrounding would be borne by the facility district and ultimately paid by the landowners who are beneficiaries of the undergrounding to pay into its assessment district to cover the cost. But you could look at combining a UUD with that effort to help offset some of the facility costs. It's really just council's decision. We'd have to bring forward the ordinance defining that area where you want the utility district, the underground utility district to be formed, what area it covers.
Does it have to be specific, or can it just be a general blanket? Kevin, I see you shaking your head no.
Yeah, our understanding is we need a very specific map defining the boundaries of the underground utility district.
And where are we with that special study that we had, that company put together for that?
Well, it's in drafts now, and it's forthcoming. We were just talking about that a few minutes ago. So when we brought this back in March, I can't remember the date, we had 3 areas identified for the council to consider. And then we were directed to bring back more information. So I can, if directed, we can start working on this as one thing on that list. The problem is the 800,000 doesn't really go that far in terms of undergrounding. So it was, I think we're gonna come back to some cost estimates to try to figure out which of the 3 that we presented.
I'm just kind of of the position that if we could earmark that $894,000 and not have a drop dead date by when we have to use it, we should probably throw that money into that pot. Councilmember Fowler, I'm not sure how you feel on that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to have more information on this, how this Rule 28, it's kind of new to me. Though 897 or 70, whatever, 898,000 may not go very far, it's a lot of money. it'll do more, even a small area, it will do something. But I'm not clear on the district. I'd like more information. Is that going to be a fee driven where it's a share? You have to have a shared amount of funding to go towards this money? Or I think just kind of bringing us all up to speed on what this means, how it works. And rather than just come back with an ordinance where there's going to be a lot of questions, maybe just walk us through as a council this whole process and what it means, and then we can maybe give some direction. But I just, I mean, we struggle for every nickel in our city, and it just, I know there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I just don't like to see money like this fall off the table and be reallocated to another city. So I would like to see what we need to do to maybe preserve that funding and get some projects done here locally.
And, yeah, thank you, Joe. And just for clarification, was this rule 20A in effect back in March of 20 when we looked at this?
If the Rule 28 program, from a statewide perspective, has been in effect for a number of years. At this time, it appears that the CPUC is phasing out the project. I think it seems like maybe it's because it's underutilized on a statewide basis, because the cost exceeds the revenue collection for that effort. And there's also competition for all funding sources. So I think there's an interest in directing this fund to other uses. But really what the council needs to do to prevent allocation is just establish a district. We didn't see a specific timeline in the regulations that says you absolutely have to carry out a project by a drop dead date, but you do have to have an active district established where you would like to direct the funding source to be able to underground utilities. And I think to Councilmember Paul's point, some of the projects that we looked at, for example, Second Street, the cost of the work far exceeds what we could collect. So it would be necessary to allocate additional costs or scale back the project. And I think that's kind of where we stopped last time, was there was an interest in fully doing the whole project, but the gap between the whole project and what we have in terms of Rule 28 credits was over $1 million. So it was going to be feasible to fund it without additional funding, or to be able to carry out the project without additional funding. But with that said, I think from a staff's perspective, it might make sense to still establish the district, thereby keeping our funds kind of out of the reallocation process, subject to us in staff working to find how we might be able to carry out a project, either a smaller scale or with additional funding to take it for the whole area that we'd like to see covered under the program.
But we could also possibly get them to reallocate somebody else's funding to our project. And I do remember the Second Street project, I think, and Eric, you probably know better than anyone. I think it was going to run from Washington up to City Park along Second Street, where it's really congested with wiring. Well, I'd like to see us move forward and not lose this money. I'm not sure what the time restraints are and how long it would take staff to put something together, but it sounds to me if we don't move quickly on it, we could lose that 800,000. Well, let's just call it an even 900,000. See, now it's 894,000, so we could lose 900,000 if we don't move on that.
My recommended step would be to bring forward a discussion of the Rule 28 program that Councilmember Paul requested, with some options, and then once council narrows down their, where we'd like to focus our Rule 28 program, we could then bring back specific ordinance that defines the project area.
And if I may, through the chair, the other thing, I think we talked about streets and those that are in really, really, really disrepair. Somehow, if there's a way to mirror that with some of this money by undergrounding, where we could use some of this money in conjunction with the SB1 money and the Measure M money to maybe do more projects, in some really bad areas and accomplish the undergrounding and using some of that money to repave those really bad streets. There may be a way to blend some of that creatively.
Councilmember Paul, we'll certainly look at that. The legislation is pretty clear, it has to be dedicated to the activity, but we can certainly.
When you underground, that means you tear up streets. I mean, there's no way to underground without doing that. And once you do that, you gotta repair them. So it seems like that would be a match to, if we put in our districts certain areas that we feel are doable projects with a smaller budget, if you will, we may be able to do some of those things.
Well, I think if I remember correctly, Councilmember Paulo, there were some restrictions on how much paving you could actually do. Because we as a council at that time thought it would be an ideal opportunity to not only get the underground, but get our streets paved.
Yeah.
Somebody else's
You know,
expense.
it would only pay for the piece.
The piece.
Yeah, the piece, but it would still take that piece off the equation out of the SB1.
Right.
So it would only pay for the undergrounding portion, but that would be a piece of the street and the rest of it would be funded through our local funding.
Well, our last council meeting, of course, is tomorrow evening for the month of July, so when do you think we can see this again? Because I'm just concerned that we're gonna run out of time here.
I think staff can bring something forward at the first meeting in August.
Okay.
At least it's just an overview with seeking council direction.
And the last time they reallocated, it was a small amount, it wasn't full, it was like 8,000 of the 900, so.
Well, if we play our cards right, maybe we can get somebody else in reallocation, so. Okay, I'm gonna open these two letters, for public comment. Anyone, out in the virtual world, just raise your hand. Anyone here at the, council chambers, just also raise your hand if you have comments. Okay, I see, Paul, you'd like to add something to the conversation, please.
A cousin of mine is married to a guy that works for PG&E. And it costs $1 million a mile to replace a high voltage line. To put it underground is $20 million a mile.
Yeah.
Because of the size of the wire and the insulation and the conduit and so. $900,000 is a lot of money to us, but it doesn't do anything for underground lines. I might throw that out.
But like Councilmember Powell said, every nickel on.
Oh, yeah, every nickel
We gotta grab it.
that you can use.
And what we're seeing, or at least what I've seen just in looking at how other cities have made use of the funds, is they really scale back the project to something they can accomplish with the amount of funding that's available. So, we tend to look at larger sections of streets where we want to underground, and maybe it's just really kind of paring back and focusing on the key areas where maybe access is affected, where it's important to underground to help, make key changes in maybe there's development that's there. So we'll have to come in with a suggestion council. So you might go ahead, kind of, as you say, measure your expectations a little bit in terms of what you can accomplish with the amount of funding that's available.
Like your idea. Get the street construction along with the underground and see if you can coordinate it together and save a few bucks there and there.
And Chair Wolf, I did want to reflect that we received the additional communication after the packet was published.
Okay.
This is, it was forwarded by Ms. Susie Cummings to Irene. It's communication from Mr. Wayne Diggs. Mr. Diggs is concerned about vegetation management in the forest to the west of Clover Springs community. And he's referencing the Community Wildfire Protection Plan Committee as a tool to help get the, Susie Cummings is inviting Wayne to participate in the Community Wildfire Protection Planning effort to address the concerns about the vegetation on our west-facing side as a tool to help mitigate the concern around fire hazards. So Mr. Diggs has provided public comments to the council, expressing his concern about what he refers to as excessive vegetation growth in and around Clover Springs. It's requested the city to take the necessary steps to help manage and address the vegetation in areas within the city.
Thank you. In a minute here, we'll be approving the minutes from our March 23rd meeting and Wayne's comments on that as well. So if nobody has anything else, Councilmember Fowler, staff, we're going to go ahead and move to the next item. Seeing no one, we'll go ahead and move for approval of the regular meeting minutes of March the 23rd, 2021. And Councilmember Fowler, you weren't with us at that time, but I'm going to go ahead and move for approval as submitted. So staff, is there a second?
Chair, I'll second your motion.
All right. Any objections? Irene, let the minutes reflect that the minutes of March 23rd, 2001 were approved.
Thank you.
Okay, next is new items for this discussion. And the first one is water supply update date and drought response. And whose item is that?
Thank you, Chair. I'll start and joined by Eric Hansen, our senior engineering technician, as well as Kevin Thompson, our assistant city manager and community development director. We've been part of what I refer to as the water emergency response team for the city that has been working on addressing the drought. There's quite a bit to report here under this item, but I'll try to be concise in providing an update. So we monitor our wells that provide our potable water for our residents on a daily basis. On a weekly basis, the well data is reported to the State Water Resource Control Board. We are monitoring both static and dynamic well levels along with flow in the Russian River. So far, our wells in 2021 compared to the water levels in 2020 are basically at or approximately the same static water level. And each, I don't have all the number of wells in front of me, but generally they're tracking fairly consistently with where they were a year ago today. So on the water supply side, we're in pretty good shape. We're able to meet our daily demand fairly reasonably. We're not having to take any extraordinary measures to meet daily demand by our residents. Currently, daily demand is averaging between about 1.2 and 1.4 million gallons per day. It fluctuates between if it's a hot day or a cooler day. Day like today, where it's a little bit cooler, it's probably going to be on the lower end. It might even be down into 1.1 or the high 1.1 million gallons per day. With that said, Council has adopted a 25% mandatory conservation target, and we've been kind of floating along that target pretty closely, kind of bouncing below it, above it, again, based on where daily demand lies relative to our water use a year ago. So we've been pretty close to meeting our 25% conservation target as a community. So thank you, Cloverdale residents, for your work in conserving water in your household, because it's helping us meet our conservation target. Very recently, the Water Resource Control Board did enact some emergency regulations. The emergency regulations provide the opportunity for the state board to issue what are referred to as a curtailment order, which in the essence, it sets fairly strict health and safety standards that would apply to what the order refers to as pre-1914 water right holders. The city what we call senior water rights along the Russian. And so we're, from a water right holder perspective, we hold, really what are some of the best rights, characterized as that. But this emergency order sets to potentially restrict our pre-1914 water rights. But we're looking at this very carefully in terms of how it pertains to water right law. So this order has been referred to our city attorney so that we can do an analysis. We're also looking at it very carefully to understand when the curtailment order may be coming into effect. There are some triggers within the order that sets forth once Lake Mendocino, which is our primary surface water supply, hits certain levels, it will trigger this curtailment order. We think it's very likely that the curtailment order will come into effect as of August 1st, which the curtailment order sets the reservoir level at 26,109 feet. We were just several acre feet above that yesterday, and given the drawdown, we're very likely to hit that trigger by August 1st, at which time the city will have to respond to the requirements and conditions within the order. And again, we're looking at that very carefully to make sure that we are in a position to respond. One of the responses, of course, is to discontinue diversions, but given the health and safety needs of our community, that's not an avenue that we're going to recommend or otherwise proceed with. We are going to continue to divert water to meet the needs of our community, but we will also be working with council and the community to identify how we can conserve additional water behind the mandatory 25% to ensure we're doing our best to address and comply with the curtailment order. But again, staff needs to look at it more carefully and legal review, as well as the technical analysis, to see where we stand relative to the order and how we are going to comply as soon as it comes into effect.
Thank you. Councilmember Powell, before I ask my questions, do you have any others?
No, I don't have any questions, but obviously it's a real concern. There's only so much curtailment you can do and still be able to have, your laundry washed and take a shower and wash your hands. So it's getting concerning. My biggest concern is we're relying entirely on, is it going to rain next year? And I haven't heard any conversations that I'm aware of. And if you have heard, what's plan B if we don't have a wet year? So that's the question I throw out there, because it is a very big concern, not just to me, to our community. 600,000 people that rely on Lake Mendocino and Lake Sonoma. And as we continue to see the water, the drought and the water levels go down, people doing everything they can to cut back, but at some point, you're going to reach the end that they can cut back. What is the plan? I'd be interested if there is a plan B at the state level to address that. So what is?
Councilmember Paul, to answer your question, city staff has really been spending a lot more time in monitoring what's happening at the state, what's happening regionally, and what's happening locally with many of our partner agencies, organizations, to assess what are going to be some action steps that we're going to have to take should this drought continue, and of course, in case that it worsens. Thus far, I'm really happy to report that our wells are doing quite well. They're performing well. We're not seeing the significant drawdown. Of course, as the drought goes on, that could change. And I think what it does point to is the necessity that we do additional evaluation to determine if there are other options for us, including looking at other wells maybe that are under the influence of Russian River, to see if there are opportunities to bolster our water supplies when these cases arise. We're seeing that happen. Sonoma Water, they're looking at some off-river sources that they can bring online to help supplement some of the water demand, particularly for the kind of maybe non-household usage. Again, got to be able to address some of those other, irrigation needs to help preserve the limited supply of water available for kind of district health safety needs. So that's something I think we may want to talk about, or the council may want to talk about, what kind of steps we can take to look at bolstering our water supply and maybe not relying entirely on fresh water. Of course, it's a very great, high quality source of water. It's been beneficial to our community for well over 100, going on 150 years now, and it served our community well. So no reason to go away from it, but certainly look at opportunities to supplement that water, especially maybe in our parks where we might want to do some irrigation, well water, those kinds of things that can reduce our need for potable water for our residents. That really kind of starts doing an evaluation of what options are there for us to help supplement that water supply, including the possibility of building, additional wells to ensure we've got the supply.
Well, I just have a couple of minutes, David, and thank you for that report. I think as a city, we want to cooperate with the state as much as we can with any mandates that they come down. However, when people start looking at taking our water rights away, it bothers me considerably. And I think our water rights are not only restricted to the Russian River, but they are also Sulphur Creek as well. Now, I don't know how that works. The water coming out of Sulphur Creek, is that considered separate from the Russian River? And we take that flow and take it into account downstream? Or do we drop a well up there on Sulphur Creek somewhere? With that being said, the state keeps mandating that we take on small water agencies, and we let them put their straw in the water of Cloverdale as well. I'm referring specifically to 6 acres. We're going through a mandate where we have to take those folks into our water district, as well as, I think, South Cloverdale Water District will be coming on board with us shortly as well. So they want us to supply everyone, by the same token, they want to cut back what we have. I'd also like to encourage staff to make sure that our water storage tanks are in tip-top condition. The last thing we need is a leak up there, and have a tank sitting empty. We want to make sure that we can store as much water as we can. The other thing, thank you. I read your article or your interview with Press Democrat, I believe it was yesterday, on water rights, and I think you stated it nicely. We want to cooperate, but don't tread on our water rights. We'll do everything we can, but we're gonna our straws in the river first. So with that being said, I'd like to open it up to the public. Anyone on Zoom, please raise your hand if you have anything to say. Anyone in the audience here? Okay, we'll see no one. Councilmember Paulo, if you didn't have anything else, we'll go ahead and move on.
Chair, and just before moving on, I did want to mention, as part of this item is drought response, that we recently executed the agreement with the Sonoma Marine Water Saving Partnership. And I think thus far we've found that the partnership is very, very beneficial. I want to acknowledge Eric Jansen, our senior engineering technician, coordinating with staff, the water partnership. And I think there's going to be a number of programs that will be rolling out in the near future. Throughout, it is isolated to Cloverdale, so everywhere from Cloverdale or Ukiah really down to Marin, the Sonoma Marine Water Saving Partnership is working on expanding its program, its reach, and its messaging. We do plan another drop-by event for drop buckets. There's going to be continual messaging around conservation of water that intended to just get the word out to the community how important it is to save water. So you'll continue to see that messaging pushed out via the city's social media pages, via our website, and also our newsletter as we continue to promote water conservation efforts by our community or businesses. Eric, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that.
The primary thing to understand about the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership is this is primarily an outreach tool, but it's also a means by which we can access other state funding. There is an expectation that there will be drought-related funding coming from the state at some point in the immediate future, but we don't know what it's going to be yet. The Saving Water Partnership is currently exhausting the funding that it received from Prop 84. That program is now winding down, but whatever money has been left is being used right now to help us do other outreach programs. And our recent drought drop-in event or drop-by event, whereby we gave away buckets full of water-saving stuff, low-flow shower heads and the like, was funded through the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership. So this is one of the benefits of this membership that we've now joined.
Well, that's a good program. When I hear the state giving us money because of the drought, hopefully it's going to be money that we could use to explore possibilities of other water sources. You know, coming off of the river, coming into the town, dropping a well, going down to the airport, dropping a well. And it's not just going to be related to feel-good programs. We're going to do shower heads and low flow cages.
Well, these are the kind of things that should be advocated directly to the governor, because we do not know what form this funding is going to take or the amount of funding that will be available to Cloverdale. But these are the kinds of things that our elected officials at the state level need to know so that they can figure out what it is they are going to provide to us.
So with that, through the chair, maybe if you could maybe articulate a letter that we could have city send to our state representatives, that would be really helpful. And I would also like to include possible funding to maybe do reclaim water, kind of something like what Healdsburg has in place today to do for your landscape parks and for irrigation that, that would ordinarily, so we really should explore those options. And I would love to see us plant the seed in our state representatives about, putting funding up on the table to help cities accomplish those things. I know Healdsburg has a really good program going on. If you drive through the town, you'll see 500-gallon tanks sitting on every driveway or close to it. And they come by and they fill those once a week so people could irrigate their landscape, which is really nice. I'd love to see our parks be able to stay green so the kids could have sports and do those things. So these are programs we thinking ahead, how do we reduce our use? That's a good way to reduce quite a bit of fresh water use.
And Councilmember Paul, you've actually struck on our most viable option for preserving our ability to provide water to the rest of the city. Our senior rights are wonderful, and we have two, one to the surface water of the Russian River and one to the surface water of Big Sulphur Creek. We use them both to provide for the city. But really the only other viable alternate source of water is reclaimed wastewater. Now, it's a high price tag for it, but it is something that our own Regional Water Quality Control Board very much would like Cloverdale to do. They potentially have a way to help us do it. It won't pay for the whole project by any stretch. But this is something that council should be thinking about, how to fund such a project, because it is our best chance of being able to weather drought situations like this.
And it would be helpful if we had some information on what types of funds we're talking about. and various options to pay it over time.
Well, you're both absolutely right, and I'm just gonna back up maybe a month, 2 months ago, when we tried to get funding for our capital improvement projects, and one of those projects is tertiary water treatment. And there was no appetite by the public to raise our water rates enough to cover even the basic capital improvement projects. So unless that entire funding is coming out of Sacramento, it's going to be a tough fight for everyone to step up to the plate and agree to increases in their rates. And I think part of the problem you mentioned to sound in the ear of our legislators up in Sacramento that funding for drought, for the drought emergency, how we can spend it. You know, I see Senator McGuire come to Cloverdale and do town hall meetings. I see Jim Wood, I see Thompson, and we ask them these puffball questions. You know, they're feel-good questions. We just don't hold their feet to the fire enough, and you know, that's not what we want to hear. We want to hear what can we do to get more money and more funding out of Sacramento, instead of the feel-good questions that we ask.
So once we get that letter, I'd like to get a copy of it, because then I want to get on the phone with both Senator McGuire, Senator Wood, and our Congress chairman.
No, I meant. No questions, nothing else. Let's move on. Do we want to take things out of order? Do we want to do an update on the scout cabin renovations, or do we want to jump right into the signalization?
Chair, if it's okay, we'd like to proceed with the traffic signalization
Sounds good.
project. We have Steve Fitzsimmons joining us from W-Trans. We also have Craig Johnson, our staff, joining us today. Just a little bit of background. This discussion item is in regard to the recently installed traffic signal at the Treadway Santana South Cloverdale Boulevard intersection. This has been a project that has had its foundation almost 20 years ago with the completion of the Ferber Plaza project. The Ferber project actually set aside funding for future development or future construction of signals. But since that time, of course, there was additional development within the city that increased the need for placing a signal at that intersection. And it was also studied quite a bit by W-Trans as our traffic engineering firm that led up the first and foremost the analysis, and then secondarily the design, and then ultimately the construction. The intersection that is served by the traffic signal is, one of the more complicated intersections that we have, because of the offset east-west street section between Santana and Treadway, which has necessitated a double signal, and it complicates signal operations to a certain extent in terms of timing of vehicle movements through the signal. But joining us today is Steve Fitzsimmons. Steve has been with this project through the design phase and ultimately through construction, and he's going to walk us through an overview of the project and presentation, and provide the opportunity to both the subcommittee members as well as the community to provide their feedback on some of the concerns that we've heard expressed. And likewise, we have already requested some additional modifications to be undertaken to address what we understand are some of the perceived concerns with the operation of the signal. So I'd like to turn it over to Steve. Steve, can you hear me over there?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, good. I'll share my screen and dive right in. And go to presentation mode. Can everybody see the slides all right?
We can see him.
Okay, good. I have about 5 or 6 slides. It'll go pretty quick. I hope you can give me a chance to go through it and then hold your questions till the end. Chair, committee members, staff, and attendees, my name is Steve Fitzsimons, and I work at the consulting firm WTrans. The project area, just to remind you, is near the south end of town, South Cloverdale Boulevard, and the intersections with Treadway Drive and Santana Drive. Oh, sorry. The study that Eric mentioned just a moment ago was completed in March 2019. The traffic signal construction contract was awarded in March 2020. And the initial signal timing, it was first turned on in late May this year. We had a couple of hiccups and had to keep trying, but it's been stable now, I think, for about a month. The traffic signal installation plan followed out of the study. One of the conclusions from the study was that the intersections are so close together that trying to use 2 independent traffic signals would result in very difficult coordination of the 2. And if we didn't coordinate them with some precision, that you could have people, for example, northbound on Cloverdale Boulevard having to stop at Santana and then having to stop again at Treadway, which is something that most people find to be very frustrating. We ended up with a choice to move forward with a single traffic signal controller, that's another word for a computer, to operate both intersections concurrently. And what we did was develop this phase diagram that you see here along the bottom left of the plan view. And the dash in the middle of each of these rectangular shapes represents the break between the 2 intersections. So what you see on the left side of that dash is what's happening at Treadway, and what you see on the right is what's happening at Santana. And then the solid line indicates a change in time. So for the beginning of the cycle, we start off with southbound traffic, and when they get to Santana, they can either turn left or go straight through. They have a green for either choice. And then we go to just northbound and southbound operating, and then we flip over and do the northbound operation with the left turn option once they get to Treadway. We then start serving the side street movements. In this case, phase 3 is the Chevron driveway. Phase 7 is the driveway to the private property, the dirt driveway that's right alongside the Chevron. And then we serve Santana Drive. And finally, we serve Treadway Drive. So hopefully that's all clear. The one point I really want to make here is that with this one controller and with the attempt to have every movement, every access point, so coming out of the Chevron driveway, for example, and you want to turn left onto Cloverdale, when you get to Treadway, you'd have a green to go straight through. Same thing with coming out of Treadway. When you get to Santana, you'd have a green to go straight through. That results in a larger number of phases than a normal traffic signal has to choose between. It results in a little bit more complexity and a longer signal cycle. Since the signal has been turned on, we've received 3 general areas of complaints. One was people eastbound on Treadway pulling up to the light are waiting and getting a red light display even though they can't see any traffic moving. And it's very frustrating, of course, for anyone to have that happen when you pull up to a light and nothing changes. And then if a stopwatch would tell you it was 20 seconds later, you finally get your green, your brain and body and heart would tell you you've been waiting for 5 minutes. And I felt that way when it was my turn to have that. And I know that's a pretty common thing for people to feel. The second area of delay was pedestrians crossing Treadway thought that the conflicting turning movements were getting a green light while they still had the green crossing right away, the hand or the flashing hand or the walking person symbol. And we went out and did some site observations, and we didn't actually see any conflicts like that. What we did see was pedestrians that had started late for various reasons, and before they finished crossing, for example, the northbound left turn from Cloverdale to Treadway got the green, and the drivers started moving, and they were moving towards the pedestrians. But we looked into that for the timing to see if anything could be done to separate those two more cleanly. In Santana Drive intersection, we got complaints of long delays, primarily for people coming out of the Chevron or people coming out of the Sinclair who are now directed to use Santana Drive and make a left so they can get to the 101 ramps. What we want to attempt, and we tried to call DCE and get this implemented before the meeting today. We actually weren't able to do that. They're under some staffing constraints right now, and they'll be able to get to it next week. But to use a technical term for a minute here, there's a term in traffic signal operations called recall. And what recall does is it instructs the signal at any time of day to bring the green display to the main street through movements. Recall is a really good display operation strategy to use when the majority of your traffic is on that main street green and you want them just to be able to go straight through and minimize the amount of what we call vehicle hours of delay. Recall, to describe it simply, is just a constant call that is only enacted when there's no other traffic moving. But when there's no other traffic in the moving, it'll just move the signal to display a green on that main street through traffic. What we're looking into doing here, because it seems like the issue we're confronting is there's not a good balance with the initial operations and the side street traffic delays. And so we're considering taking off the recall programming and switching it to a programming type that's called red rest. And in red rest, when there's nobody moving at all, every direction is seeing a red. The advantage to the red rest is you would come up to the light on any approach, and as soon as your call was placed, in other words, as soon as you were on the detection zone, you would get a green. So it would kind of equalize things at the intersections for the side streets and the main street. The second thing we like to do is to fine tune what we call overlap extension settings. And I'm just going to go briefly back to the plan view to show you what this means. If you have the southbound green at Cloverdale and Treadway in the green display, there's an overlap phase for southbound at Cloverdale and Santana. When the green ends at Treadway, the overlap continues green. Right now it's set for 5 additional seconds so that the people who cross Treadway will be able to get out of the whole bigger intersection before that light goes red, and they won't have to stop in between. We'd like to fine tune that overlap timing and reduce it until it's really accurately representing the travel time through the intersections. And we may be able to reduce delays for the side streets another 2 to 3 seconds. The recall setting, we're hoping that the delays will reduce by 5 to 10 seconds, and this one by 2 to 6 seconds. As I mentioned, DCE, the city's maintenance contractor for the traffic signal, already has a request to make these 2 changes, and we hope to implement that next week. The other things we'd really like to do is hear from you today, see what else you've experienced there that you'd like to see changed, and address it through additional updates, which we'll develop after hearing your input, and have at least one more trip up to the site to continue to observe and fine tune the settings. As you probably know, some of our staff members live nearby and come through here periodically, and they'll be able to do that on an informal basis going forward as well. So thank you for your attention, and it's time for your questions. And I'm going to try to stop sharing so we can see each other. But I have to be able to find the display.
Thank you, Steve, for that presentation. The chart you gave us, I have to admit, are totally Greek to me. It's like another language, but I was able to follow along with your verbal account. I'm going to turn this item over to Vice Chair Fowler. With his ex-background, I just feel he's more educated in signaling and traffic flows than I am. But before I do that, I just had one question for you. The red rest, when everything goes into red, is there a priority? Like if 2 cars came up at the same time, the other one coming in off of Santana, which one would have the priority? The first one there or the heaviest flow?
There's a sort of priority still for the northbound and southbound through traffic because they have detection at the stop bar, but they also have advanced detection. And none of the left turn lanes or the side streets have the advanced detection. So as they're approaching, they would hit their advanced loop probably first and get the green, the first green. But there's no priority in terms of saying that between phases 4 and 8, that 8 should get the first call if they both arrive at the same time. Traffic signals honestly measure detection inputs to the nearest, I think it's 100th of a second. And so the probability of an actual exactly the same time arrival is pretty darn low. So it just goes with whatever is really first.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Paul, do you mind sharing this item?
No, not at all. Thank you so much, Steve. It was very informative, but I have to tell you, it is really a problem intersection currently. There's a lot of community concerns over it, a lot of complaints. I've experienced those same frustrations personally, driving that probably 3 or 4 times in any given day, sometimes more. And what I want to know, is there a way Cloverdale Boulevard should be green continuously unless can only change when there's somebody, a pedestrian going to cross a treadway and they push the button, or a car on Santana or treadway comes up to make a left turn from either one of those, which would trigger it to go through a cycle of amber and red. But I see everybody stop and nobody going often, and it's very, very frustrating. And it is not working currently, where if you stop at treadway going south, you will hit Santana, and oftentimes if you're the second or third car back, you will hit another red light by the time you get there. That's happened quite often. I feel that those lights really need to move the north and southbound traffic. That's the bulk of the traffic. Very little traffic's coming out of Treadway or Santana, and when it does, you're talking 1 or 2 cars. They're done within a matter of seconds, yet you sit through what seems like, as you mentioned, seems like 5 minutes. Realistically, maybe it's 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes, but you're sitting there. The last comment I just want to make, and then I'll open it up for anybody else, is the left turn arrows off of to turn onto Santana, off of Cloverdale Boulevard going south, or coming north to turn onto Treadway. Would that be something that could be amber, flashing amber, so people could go there and, if it's safe, make that turn, not sit through a time cycle when nobody's coming in that direction? I've seen that in many cities and it works. I don't feel we have that kind of traffic making those turns, that if it's safe, they should be able to proceed. So that's the comments I wanted to throw out.
Okay. Did you want me to respond to yours now or wait for other questions and then take them all at the end? How do you prefer?
Why don't we just take it all at the end, because I think there'd be some overlap, so you know.
Okay.
So I don't know if staff has any comments or Greg, did you have anything? Maybe, is there anybody? Just 1 second. Okay, we have one public comment here, and then I'll open it up. Go ahead.
Casino Avenue, where you turn into that Safeway. Then Casino,
Yeah.
I know
they have that continuous blinking yellow there.
Yeah.
You can turn it safe.
You see that?
There's not that much traffic down here. Why could you do that?
Did you hear him okay, Steve?
Yeah, I think it was another way to restate the flashing yellow preference.
Steel lane,
Steel lane, you were talking about the flashing amber arrow where you can
Right.
make
making left turn.
trips, right? Are there any hands?
Okay, Councilmember Paul, once again, want to make sure, you said left turn off of Treadway onto the boulevard?
No,
No.
Boulevard off.
From Treadway.
Turning left on,
Yeah.
turning left off the boulevard.
Yeah,
onto
if
Treadway.
you're coming north on the boulevard, you're going to turn left onto Treadway.
And you want that one a blinking amber.
I think,
That's the question. You're asking.
yes. And you yield if cars are coming, when there's no cars, you make that turn.
But you mentioned you're making a turn onto the boulevard when it's green on Treadway and it's red on the boulevard? Is that your first comment? I just want to capture the issue.
You lost me on that one.
You're leaving, you're on Treadway, you're taking a southbound or right-hand turn onto the boulevard, you're experiencing a red light?
No,
No, okay.
no, I was saying when you're coming, southbound on the boulevard, you'll stop at Treadway. And if you're the third or fourth car back, stop. Oftentimes, when you hit Santana, 2 or 3 cars may get through and then turn red.
Wow.
That's what I'm saying. So you are catching both lights and going through the cycle lights. And like I say, I've experienced where there's been no cars coming from any direction and it goes through the full cycle. So
And we do have one hand up in the audience.
okay.
Go ahead, Angela.
Hi there. I'm sorry, I was interrupted a couple of times because I'm at work. So I'm sorry if this was already addressed, but what was the reasoning of so many lights? Can it just be simplified, a few of them removed or something simplified? It just seems like it's very chaotic and it backs up the overpass when, I've experienced it myself sitting there for at least a half an hour trying to get through. I've seen that the light changes very rapidly, only letting about 2 or 3 cars to make it through both lights. It locks up everybody up on the overpass. I don't understand the complexity of why there needed to be so many lights there.
Angela, Steve's going to address all these at the end after all the questions. So he'll get to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No other hands are raised.
Okay. So Steve, you can go ahead and address them, please.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for your input. This is really good. The first question was, is there a way Cloverdale can remain in green unless there's demand on another movement? In my industry, we refer to the other movements as the minor movements. That's either the side street or the left turn movements. That's the way it currently is set up. That's what you should be seeing now. And you're not? I'm seeing you shaking your head no. Mr. Councilmember, yeah.
It's
Okay.
not in that way.
All right. We need to get up and make it work the way it's supposed to be working then. The second question was, if you're driving southbound and you are not at the front of the queue, if you're three cars or more towards the back, that you do get cut off and get a red light when you get to Santana. The way this signal is programmed, the 5 seconds that I mentioned a little while ago is supposed to start the clock for that 5 seconds when the last car has gone through at Treadway so that they get through to Santana. So again, we'll have to come up. We did spend kind of a late evening from 5:30 to 6:30 observing operations and thought it was doing okay, but maybe we just missed the real peak time when there's longer queues. But we'll have to come back and check that out. And like I said, we've got an appointment with DCE early next week. So we'll be addressing those ones and trying to adjust it to work the way it's supposed to be working. I don't at this point understand why it's not. The left turn arrows, if you want to turn the southbound left to Santana or the northbound left to Treadway, can those be flashing yellow arrow? We're going to have to check that out with the software vendor. I think it's very doable here, but because of the way we used overlaps and not just numbered phases, we may have to just check and be sure that that's technically feasible within the constraints of the software. If it is feasible, it's relatively easy to implement. We would change out the red, yellow, green, or the red, amber, green left turn signal heads to the 4 section heads that you're used to. I'll warn you that we've designed quite a few flashing yellow arrow conversion projects around the North Bay and Sonoma County in particular. And most of the cities where we've designed these and seen them being put in, the pedestrians don't like it. The people who are driving their cars on a flashing yellow arrow left turn don't quite seem to treat pedestrian right away the same they would as if they had a red light. You know, you're supposed to wait at the limit line until the peds are clear and then go when it's clear. So we may have to take some special care to be sure to implement that in a way that the left turners would be properly coached to wait, you know, at the limit line before they start their turn if there's a pedestrian. The first member of the public, I didn't catch a name, I'm sorry, also likes the flashing yellow arrow. I got the point that it would simplify things so that people could make their left turn and not have to wait for the whole light to cycle around and give them a green arrow. That is the primary benefit of the flashing yellow arrow operation, and it's probably just a really good idea here. And then Angela asked, what was the reasoning of so many lights? It backs up to the overpass. It only lets 2 to 3 cars get through at a time. Again, the signal is supposed to operate so that if there's a long line of cars, they all get through. If there's a super long line, they may not all get through, but a long line of cars should all be getting through. And we certainly should not be seeing anything back up to the overpass. I wonder if I could ask you guys to clarify the times of day that you've seen this. That would help me get the staff people out there at the right time of day.
You know, for myself, it's been different times throughout the day, but definitely towards the end of the day of people coming into town from out of town.
Okay, thank you.
It's backed up.
Yeah, that's why we went out the first time at 5:30, hoping to catch the commute, you know, towards the peak time for the commute. But maybe it was just a day that the traffic wasn't very heavy because we didn't see any of this, unfortunately. But we'll keep looking, and like I said, next week we'll be there with DCE to look again and to fine tune and try to get things working properly.
Steve, this is David Kelly. I'm off camera, but I just want to mention because I went through the signal like between 5 and 6, and I haven't experienced the same issues. I think we may have different peak times at those intersections. I'm thinking it might be before 5, so somewhere between 4 and 5, maybe a time when we're seeing the peak volumes come through those intersections. And that's anecdotal, but that's just kind of what I'm seeing is when there seems to be more traffic flow through those intersections. One of our staff members, Craig, I know you get off at 4, and do you tend to see that?
I tend to see people coming into town when I'm leaving, headed to the gym, south. There's a lot of people coming off the freeway going over the overpass to get to the intersection around 4 o'clock.
So that seems to suggest maybe we're getting peak volumes
between 4 and 5.
A little earlier in the afternoon than say 5.
Thank you, Craig. That's really helpful. Thank you. Yeah, I guess we were out there too late then last week. Is Angela still on? Can you comment on your?
Yeah.
There you go. 4 o'clock. When do you see the traffic backing up to the freeway?
I would have to say between 4 and 5:30 because I get back to Cloverdale at various times. And I know for me, it's trying to get to Redwood Credit Union before they close at 5. And there was a time when I gave myself enough time to get back in town, and I literally sat at the light through 30 minutes before I could even get to the bank, and I couldn't even do anything at that point. I was trapped in the intersection there and had to remain where I was.
Okay, it sounds like nobody wants us to wait for next week, so we'll try to get somebody out there tomorrow or Thursday at the latest and make some of these. This issue about the cars backing up all the way to the freeway, we should be able to solve that relatively easily. So we'll try to get that done tomorrow.
Is there a way to remove some of those lights?
We talked about the option of flashing yellow arrow displays to the left turners. Another option is just to have just a green ball for everybody northbound. And the left turners would then make their left turns when it's safe for them to do so.
Much
That would
what
be-
we did before.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said that's pretty much what we did before.
Right, yeah, when there was no signal at all, it was essentially that sort of operation. Yeah, that's correct. When we did the study,
Signal is better.
yeah, when we did the study, the protected left turn moves gave us the lowest delay values. That's why we went with the arrows, the green arrows for the left turns.
Right. And I think too that with such a small turn lane, when you're heading southbound and you hit that turn lane and the light is red, it kind of gets congested there where people aren't able to maneuver around the left turn people to continue southbound and they northbound. I'm sorry, northbound. They kind of get stuck there in that merge of the left lane.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I meant northbound and they're heading west onto Treadway there, and they're kind of stuck when the light is red turning left, which is west. When you're heading northbound, they're kind of stuck there at that little merge and you can't maneuver.
So are you also saying that people traveling northbound and turning to Treadway, making that left turn to Treadway, that move is backing up as well?
Yes, I've seen that one back up as well.
Okay, thank you. And again, it would be, if we were out there between 4 and 5, it would be the best time to see this?
I would have to say 4 to 5:30 to be safe.
Okay, 4 to 5:30, yeah.
Those are
Yes.
the times that I can say that I saw it.
Okay, we have a good menu of things to take care of, and I'll try to get somebody out there tomorrow, and I will I'll let Eric know if we can do it tomorrow or if it'll have to be a day later.
Well, thank you. I have a question for staff and for you, Steve. Would it be helpful if we took all of these concerns and sent you an email so that you would know what you're addressing? And then when you're done, you could respond to each one and get it back to us so that we can make sure that everything's been covered. And if you would like one of us to be out there, if you could just let us know when you're going, I'd be more than happy to join you if I could.
Okay. Let me take care of that. I've been typing up the issues as I've been hearing them. So maybe I can start by sending that to, would it be to Eric, I'm guessing?
Yes, to Eric.
And then he can edit anything he heard that I may have missed. And if you guys want to add other things afterwards, please do. We'll look at them all.
Okay, Eric, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'll play catch and then I will distribute out to the rest of you so you have an opportunity to comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Well, Steve, thank you for coming and sharing. And to the public, hopefully we can get this resolved quickly and to most everyone's satisfaction. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for your attention and this very productive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's move on to an update on the renovations of the Scout Cabin. Maybe you can give us a little background on why we're doing that and kind of let us know where we're standing.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to do so. We've recently undertaken some work to repair and maintain our Scout Cabin or Scout Hut, as often referred to at Second Street City Park. Some of the repair work that's been done included giving the hut a new paint job, and part of that paint job was to do quite a bit of staining work and repair some of the damage that's been done, from time and the weather conditions, and of course, probably some of that from our avian preferred species that like to peck on the old wood at Cloverdale City Park. But our staff, and I think a member of our team here, Craig, is probably part of that effort to help do some of the work. there. But it was also related to some vandalism that occurred. There was some youth in our community that unfortunately decided to utilize Scout Cabin for you know, a little unpermitted activity where they did quite a bit of damage. So it led to staff also doing some interior repairs to the electrical system, some of the damaged outlets, some of the damaged light fixtures that we were able to repair. And there's also need for some painting work, I think, from the graffiti that was occurred within the interior of the building. So I think, you know, overall from the aesthetics, it's really given it a nice paint job. I think it looks a lot better. And then repaired again the damage that occurred because of vandalism and the graffiti. We do plan to do some additional repair work this year. I think the electrical panel was damaged, and there was there's some work that's needed on the furnace and HVAC system. That, you know, because it's an outdated, older system. So those are in the budget, and we will undertake those repairs as time permits. And we'll be able to, you know, continue to utilize Scout Cabin for historical purpose. But otherwise, I think it looks really nice, and I want to commend our staff for the nice work they did on that. And some of it was contracted out, some of it was done internally, but it looks a lot better. And we were able to get a lot of that repair work done in response to the damage that happened from the vandalism.
Are we planning on moving any staff over there to utilize that space as an office?
We haven't discussed that in any specific manner. I think certainly I would think our park staff would love to have that as a potential office location for them. And if directed by council, we'd certainly be willing to look at that as an opportunity to have park staff there. Because it may alleviate, you know, future vandalism if that was the case. We want to probably also look at the kind of security improvements we could make in the way of lighting and cameras and things like that could enhance the security of the facility.
Are there anything on that item?
I do have one. When we did the master plan for City Park, we walked through there and saw a lot of the vandalism, and it was in pretty bad shape. But we also saw what could be a beautiful facility for a lot of community events. Is there an intent, and again, I haven't seen where we're at with the project, but to make that venue available for people to use for such things as weddings and like birthday parties and those types of things. It's a nice venue, the trees right there at the park, and it was a little barbecue pit there. It's just a beautiful setting, and I think it's underutilized, and I'd love to see it become an asset for our community to have different community events using that facility. So has that been discussed?
I don't think that's been specifically discussed in the context of the existing Scout Cabin. I think the master plan actually identified moving the Scout Cabin and have a different location for it. But to your question, Councilmember Vice Chair, I think there is a tremendous opportunity to see how the space could be utilized by our community as a rental facility for parties, weddings, etc. I think it represents just a tremendous opportunity, and with some investment into that space, to put in the necessary amenities that would support groups using it. I think you want to have the right kinds of support amenities, sinks and those kinds of things to make sure that you have that available for groups that maybe are having meals, things like that. So we can certainly look at that as an opportunity. I think it's a large enough space that may support some small. You might be able to do both, have some small offices there along with having it be a space that can be rented. I think really maximize what's otherwise a really wonderful space. Part of it has been really dedicated to Scouts, so we have to figure out how we can work with the Scouts to for that joint use. Maybe have some loft facilities for kind of their supplies, but then just still have it be available and open for rental our Craig here. Craig, I know you're probably more than any of us familiar with the long-term historic site, and we welcome you the opportunity to have
Talk to this man. He was a scout there.
Well, they used to have the recreation department when I was a little kid. I'm 74 years old, and I think I went up there the first activity, 8 or 9 years old. So, yeah, I go back.
Oh, Paul, can you give us a little history on who built that? Was it the Rotary Club?
You know, that part about who built that, I know. Remember, it was, you know, we used to have a really defined recreation department back in the day. We had a regular full-time recreation supervisor. That was the office. You know, every day we'd go up there, play games, make potholders for our mothers. I mean, it was a great program, but that was the kind of the key to anchor point for it, so to speak. Between like, then there was the scouts. And, yeah, it was used a lot more. I think it's a good idea, improve it and try to do more community activities.
Well, I have to tell you, if you want to see how much of that park is used, you go on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. I was there last Sunday, and that pavilion area with the picnic tables, there must have been 50 people there, and there was somebody cooking fajitas and things. They brought their own grill. Actually, it was like I don't know, it was big, it was flat, and they were just eating and they were playing music, and it made my heart feel good because that's what it's for. The problem that we have there is those picnic tables are old. Some of them are falling apart. The barbecue there is actually rotted and rusted out on the bottom. So you have to line it with tin foil, and then when they're done, the ashes just fall on the ground. So we do need to put a little time and effort into it to get it back. And I agree with you, if we were to put parks and recs there, you know, there would be some repairs that the guys would do. I'm sure Hector would jump all over that. So, but that's up to you and your time schedule. So.
Some of that could be probably helped out by service.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
You know how the park was started?
No.
My dad and a bunch of buddies wanted to have a baseball field. That was just city forest. And there was a lot of farmers. They brought their the city goes, no. They brought their tractors in on the weekend. They hand cut the trees down, they ripped it. They made a baseball field there. That's where the baseball park started. So it's been there since the 30s or something like that. And then became, you know.
Well, I'm hoping that the public got to hear what Paul was saying. Lifelong Cloverdale resident and longtime family in Cloverdale. Is there anyone else out there that would like to comment on the update of the Scout Cabin and renovations?
No hands are raised, Chair.
Okay. Well, then why don't we go ahead, if there's nothing else to talk about this, and go on to the standing items and continue items. And I'm going to turn this item over to staff to just give us an update where one is appropriate rather than going down each one. And I'd also, when we get to future agenda items, I have something I'd like to add. So, David, you or who would you like to handle this?
Chair, I'll ask our senior engineering technician, Eric, to provide an update on the Sonoma County Public Health Vision Zero project.
Okay. And we don't need a long update, Eric. If there's no changes, you know, just have a quick synopsis.
Really,
Not that I'm trying to rush you, but.
We have one small highlight.
Okay.
And that is a draft action plan has now been published. And this is sort of the roadmap to the roadmap. But ultimately, it's something that staff and council should be looking at to determine whether or not this meets with Cloverdale's needs. But again, Vision Zero is primarily about how do we reduce fatalities at our intersections throughout the county. Cloverdale has just recently addressed our most hazardous intersection, so we may actually be in pretty good shape. We continue to participate in this program, but I just want to encourage council in particular to take a look at the action plan that has been presented, and provide any and all comments. This
is the opportunity to provide comments and make the Vision Zero action plan into something that serves us.
So maybe I missed it, but I have not seen that action plan. Is that available online or?
It's available online. It was also emailed to city staff. I can make sure that you get a copy.
Could you do that? That'd be great. Thank you.
Yes. You want me to take board meeting as well? We've got item B, outdoor retail business use COVID-19. Chair, no real updates there.
Okay.
So we continue to coordinate with the chamber and we contact any businesses there seeking to support their outdoor retail uses. And then item C, update on installation of port view on Plaza. That is a CIP project. I think our current intent is funded in the fiscal year 21-22 budget with use of FD. It's really about the timing for the effort. And right now, Friday Night Live is planning to run through the end of September through the first weekend in October. Our intent would be to coordinate the project after that significant use of the plaza comes to an end. And there's a number of improvements that are necessary to site first to lose to hopefully support its operations. And that's where our engineering staff comes in performing the design work to actually connect the loo to the city sanitary sewer system. And you know, if we do have a new council, I think it's something we need to hopefully bring back to council to make sure that we're in alignment, continue to be in alignment with council on that project.
Before you respond any further, I mean, could you please put up the item number 6, standing and continued items, in case the public at the end has questions on any one of these items. So, well, I surely hope that we continue with that project. You know, that's a long time goal of past city councils to get a public restroom in that plaza. I know there's a concern over who will be using it. You know, unfortunately, that's not why we're putting it there. We're putting it there for the folks that are taking public transportation, for folks that come to visit Cloverdale. They need a facility without having to go to City Hall or the chamber. So, and Councilmember Powell, just stop me as we go if you have questions.
I just have a comment. I could almost, when you're ready.
Go, I'm ready.
Well, I would like a little more discussion on this in the future. I'd like to really see, you know, kind of a schematic of the plaza and where you vision these going, because, you know, you go down and I walk the Friday Night Live every Friday night, and it's crowded. All aspects of that park is full of people. And I look at this Portland Blue, which is nice, but I'm just a little concerned on how that would fit within the people pretty much surrounding all aspects of it, because it's fairly open and it's fairly visible, and I just don't know if that's the best alternative. I think of what we put in the Vintage Meadows up there, the type of restrooms, that are more standalone with the door enclosed versus this particular style. So because of the number of people, I just have a little concern. I mean, these are nice, really well done, but I think of Friday Night Live where it would be surrounded the whole, and people would be trying to go in and out of there around people, and it just doesn't seem to fit. And that's why I'd like to see the schematic of what we're thinking, because you and I, we talked years ago regarding where the old modular was on the city parking lot. When that went away, to move them out there where they would face kind of out of the plaza, but then available right there to the plaza without the fence. But when I looked at this, it looks like they were more within the plaza, and I think that might be problematic with the way the plaza is small and the number of people that would be in there. So,
Well, I think the plan is to still put it where the modular used to be, and I also think the
Yeah.
But that's for discussion.
Well, I'd just like to maybe see what the plan is.
Yeah.
That would be a good starting point.
Yeah.
So,
If that's happening, to bring back, we did present a schematic of the proposed location. And it was within the existing confines, the plaza, because the plaza is a separate parcel from the parcel where the city hall and police station is sited. And, avoids any potential issues down the road should there ever be a relocation of city hall or other, of having a public facility cross property line. But maybe that's not an issue. The other thing we looked at was trying to reduce the encroachment into the parking area. It's interesting now that we've all returned to City Hall, there's actually very little parking available. It would maximize the parking space, and then because it is served a public safety use. Traditionally, not on all cases, but police cars are often placed in a safe, enclosed space, and it's not done currently. If you're to open that up, obviously, we bring more of the public into the kind of operational space for the police department. So that was kind of the consideration, but we're happy to look at that again.
and maybe we could just kind of, so we're all on.
Bring it here.
Yeah.
So could we agendize that for the next couple of months? Because we're not meeting again for what, we're every other month?
The public works.
Yeah.
The direction, bring it back to committee with.
Yeah, I think
more
subcommittee, or do you think the full council?
Well, I'd prefer here because then maybe we can kind of come to a consensus so we can go back to the full council with a recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rather than just kind of be all over the board. I'm just not comfortable with the Portland, what's it called?
Portland Loop.
Loop, okay, Portland Loop, the design of it being in the middle with the number of people around it and trying to, egress into and out of it.
Not to get into it now, but part of that problem, and I'm sure several, is the visibility of who's in there and what's not.
Which is good, other than the way the park is used and the number of people sitting and participating for hours. And, if it wasn't a Friday night live there, I'd say it's perfect. But because of the use is much thinner, but it's pretty heavily occupied. So anyway.
So we'll bring that back. Update on Sustainability Groundwater Management Act.
No real updates, Chair. We continue to monitor the Potter Valley project and its impact on our water supply. It's really part of the whole drought response. An important contribution to our water supply. So we just continue to monitor that project and develop.
Okay. Annual SB1 project money, and this goes back up to Rock Rose.
Yeah, I'll ask Eric to provide an update. We are about ready to execute a contract with the firm to start the work on 4th Street. So, Eric, do you want to provide an update on that?
And Eric, could you give us I already know, but for everyone else, where it's going to start and where it's going to end?
Okay, well, quick bit of background. We have a priority list for SB1 that we register with the state. The next project on that list is the 4th Street Reconstruction Project, which will extend from Washington Street all the way up to the street end up near Josephine. The entire street is going to be ripped up and reconstructed. This is not an overlay. This is not a Band-Aid. This is a full reconstruction of the street. So we have sent out the contract to the contractor. This is the contractor that council awarded the project to. We are collecting signatures right now. And as soon as the contract is executed, we will be able to hold a meeting with them out on the site and send them a notification saying time to go. And we should hopefully be under construction in the fall.
And just one follow-up question, will the residents be given the date
door hangers, knock on doors, make sure everyone is aware. And people will be given the opportunity to get in and out of their homes while construction is underway. But for a time, the road will be more or less dirt. Sure. Until it can be, the full paving can be completed.
Thank you.
All right. How about an update on the airport capital improvement program?
Happy to provide an update, Chair. The staff continues to coordinate with the Federal Aviation Administration on our capital improvement program. We are currently in the middle of a drainage design project to address infill drainage at the airport. We were just earlier this week provided an updated design for drainage improvements, which will help address some of the internal flooding that occurs during high rain events, both on the runway and taxiway. We're hoping to get to finalize our review of this updated design and then ultimately conduct environmental review and get FAA approval. That would complete the first phase of the project, which is design and environmental review. The next phase, which would be a subsequent funding cycle, would be to actually fund the proposed work to complete the drainage improvements. So that's a current status update on where we are with our airport CIP. Of course, we're still in the midst of wrapping up the federal requirements for our taxiway rehabilitation project. That was a roughly $1 million project where we completely rehabilitated and repaved our taxiway. So we've got a really nice taxiway now at the airport, complete new asphalt layer. And so this is really an appropriate next project to get the infill drainage addressed. And we'll continue to chip away at capital improvements out there as funding is available through both our federal and state partners.
Okay. And I guess the last item is maintenance update on wood structure at Plaza. And I know a couple of years ago, we spent a nice chunk of change to renovate what we had that, those wood overhangs.
And most recently, our park staff underwent a maintenance effort to address all of the wooden benches. They resanded all of them, kind of took off what was otherwise kind of a number of years of grime. So those look really refreshed. The updated wood structure still seems like they look nice. And I know our park staff does what they can to continue to maintain them and keep them in good condition, including treating them as needed.
Well, at this time, I'd like to open it up to the public, anyone that has questions on items A through H under standing continue items as posted. Please raise your hand or let us know. Paul, yes,
I'm here.
go.
Oh, the deal about public restroom.
On the plaza,
I
yes.
was reading Councilman, oh, you can't have them and all that. But we do need a public restroom downtown.
Yep.
It's real embarrassing. I'm involved with a car show to have entrants come and say, where's your restroom? I go, I think there's a portable over there by the front. We need a permanent, nice restroom for activities like that. And the other thing I had was, you're gonna pay 4th Street to the Vineyard. Are you gonna do the Harvester loop and all that, or just 4th Street?
Sadly, no. We do not have enough funding to
You just do
do the full Josephine neighborhood. Okay, I wish we did. SB1 pays us more money than we ever got before under gas tax, but not enough to do that.
Just a question.
Thank you.
Irene, do we see any hands? I don't believe so.
Yes, on Zoom, we have Trudy.
Hi, I just wanted to comment on the Portland Loo. I took a look at the website to see what it looked like, and there's no way I would use that. I understand that it protects against criminal activity, but you can see the people's legs in there. You can hear everything in there. I'd hold it rather than use something like that. I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents. And I hadn't even been thinking about using it during Friday Night Live. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you, thank you.
No other hands are raised, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Well, then why don't we move on to future agenda items?
Oh, I'm sorry. My mouse is slow. Angela.
Angela, please.
I'm sorry for being late. Yeah, the Portland Loo seems a little strange. I think that I don't understand what the problem is with having a porta potty rather than a Portland Loo. That seems a little odd. I think that there should be a little bit more research on that before it's decided. That's just my thought. I looked at the website as well, and yeah, I don't think it would be very appealing to see somebody halfway using a restroom.
Thank you, Angela. All right. Future agenda items. Councilmember Paula, do you have anything?
Just one thing, I'd like to get some, an update on our plans to do some, striping in the city. There's a lot of, fade, a lot of striping's faded, stops are not, there's words, letters missing, they're faded out. We used to stay on top of that years ago. I know we had city staff that had the stencils and they would go out. And periodically, I know they have other tasks, but periodically they would take a day and do several intersections and get that stuff painted. And at the end of the day, if they do that, it started to make a difference. So I just kind of like to know what our plans are. It's getting really bad in some areas. Thank you.
And I'm just going to back up for a second because I completely forgot item number G, which is an update on replacement of street light near Cloverdale Automotive. And I think that was already replaced, was it not?
That project is now done.
Okay.
So we can remove that from our standing items list.
Okay. There's also a trip hazard there as well, where the utility grade is. There's also a trip hazard. So that should be looked at. The item that I wanted to see on the future agenda items is a dog park. I believe somebody had told me that David White and Sherry White had posted a potential site down next to the water treatment plant. And I'm not sure, with security and all that, if we want anybody down next to our water treatment plant. We don't need anybody getting in there, we can have it. But, so if we could just maybe discuss that, potential sites. I believe Councilmember Lyons got back, or Vice Mayor Lyons got back and said that there's 2 other ones that are being considered. I think we need to have that discussion.
So if I could interject another thing, I'd also like to again revisit the city-owned 3.5 acres that are over on Santana. I know that's an old dump site, but I mean, for a dog park, and maybe even a potential skate park, they could definitely be something we could look at.
So do we have that, Stan?
Got it.
Okay. From the public, is there anything else anyone would like to share with us?
No hands are raised, Chair.
Thank you, and there's none here in the fire hall. Well, thank you everyone for attending. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. I'd like to thank staff. We got you out of here at a pretty decent time. It's 4 o'clock. Irene, as always, thank you for your hard work, and I will not be at the city council meeting tomorrow evening, but I wish you success setting up the venue. You got to practice a little bit here tonight.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for their patience.
Thank you. Where is the camera?